Imagine if you could stop all those pay-to-win premium tanks and reward vehicles without becoming one of them. Well, you can. The first tank that we do have is of course the TVP T5051, and this vehicle is absolutely brilliant at being able to remove hit points of vehicles very quickly, scooting in and dealing your 4 shells of 320 alpha with 1280 damage to those YOLOing wagons that can be at both tier 8 and of course tier 10, which your tier is. So the key thing about the TVP T5051 is that it can go 60 kilometers an hour. It has very good view range for a medium with this sort of gun. Has 410 meters view range base. These are all base values. It has 8 degrees of gun depression, which is really good considering that it does have that autoloader and it is quite flexible. And the best thing about the autoloader is of course that it only has a 1.5 second intraclip reload, which means within 4.5 seconds you'll have dealt your 1280 damage, or at least your potential 1280 damage to your opponents, and then you can hightail it out of there, you can leave, or avoid any further shots, because 4.5 seconds enables your opponent to maybe aim at you, maybe get a shot off at you, but they're not going to be able to hit you multiple times. And so if you are trading with these vehicles where you are coming around a corner, dealing all of your shells of damage and only taking 1 in return, as long as it's not an FV4005 for example, then you're going to have a much better time playing in this than in a tank like the Chieftain in those sorts of specific scenarios, which makes this a brilliant tank for combating Chieftains, for combating these overpowered tier 10s that can be really annoying for your team to deal with, because essentially if you're with a couple of your teammates and you can flank them, you can come around the side of them, or you can outplay them whereby you find them open in the middle of a field, or for example if you are pushing through a corridor map and you can come around from behind and you can surprise them, you can deal all of that damage and then leave without them basically being able to hit you. And that is what makes this thing so dangerous, and really why I think that this is a superb tank for a tier 10 medium, and of course one that can kind of be played whether you're playing in a platoon or on your own. It really is fantastic. Now, we mentioned the FV4005, and that's because it is next on this list alongside the FV215B183, and that's because these tanks are really good at being the kind of middle finger to your opponents, which try and YOLO you, they try and be just stupid and you're just sat there waiting for them. With the 1750 damage that this tank can deal with its HE rounds with 230 pen, meaning that you can basically wipe out a lot of tanks if you're playing up against tier 8s for example, or if you're playing up against the more overpowered tier 10s, you can wipe away probably 60% of the hit points of almost every single tier 10 tank, if not every single tank. Even things like the Maus are not going to be able to deal with 1750 damage hits more than twice. So yeah, this tank is just superb at being able to deal the damage and kind of give those opponents that are just being stupid a big middle finger, especially if they try and YOLO you, which is always a fun aspect of the game, is just being able to annoy the players that try and annoy you throughout the entirety of your World of Tanks games. So yeah, the FV4005 is really good at being able to do that. Is it an overpowered tank? Probably not. I mean, it isn't super OP, it's huge, it has no armor, but the whole point is that it really does stop those YOLO wagons if you can manage to hit them. And with 0.4 dispersion on a tank like this is actually not awful, which means that when you are using things to improve the accuracy, some of the perks, some of the equipment, then yeah, you can make this tank a lot more accurate and you're going to be able to hit your shots a lot easier, even if the aim time does suck at 3.55 seconds base aim time. And of course it gets 10 degrees of gun depression as well. It's a bit more flexible when you're using the 4005, and it does get a pretty mediocre 390 meters of view range, but it is capable of really being that denier of the enemy team, which is why I put it in this video, and hopefully you guys get the idea with the sort of tanks that we're placing in here. And then the final tank that we do have is one that we probably don't see a whole lot within World of Tanks, and that is the AMX AMX50 Posh B, which is the tier 10 French tank destroyer that is capable of having an inordinate amount of damage in just one clip, and that is because this has a 400 alpha damage gun, which in its own right is, you know, pretty lackluster. I mean, it's not going to do a whole lot of damage, but when you have 6 in the clip with a total of 2,400 damage that you can deal in just 10 seconds, then this becomes a real nuisance for opponents that you'll be facing, and it can once again, like the FV4005, be the blockage that enemy teams just throw themselves against you, and you're just sat there farming their hit points. And even some of the strongest heavies can't deal with this tank when it is unloading all of its shells into you, and especially if you're using the premium rounds with 325 pen, you can pretty much go through the front of most heavy tanks. And so if you are aiming correctly with this vehicle, waiting to be fully aimed in between that intra-clip reload, which is only 2 seconds as well, meaning that you can quickly deal that damage, and then you can try and hide for the next remainder of your reload, which is very long. I mean, you've got to wait 36 seconds base, which is not particularly the most amazing thing, but once again, you do have that really high alpha, and the armor, it can bounce a few rounds, but remember, it is a French tank, so it's probably going to get penned, especially a French tank destroyer, so the side armor's absolutely garbage, but you're still able to get forward, use the good accuracy that this tank has. 6 degrees of gun depression, which is okay, allows you to get at least use some positions on the map, at least most of them, not maybe get hold down or anything, and you probably wouldn't want to with this tank with that huge horn on the top of the vehicle, but it still is very, very dominant when you can get unloading. And of course, finding opponents out in the middle of the open is like a godsend, and it means that you can really destroy their hit points and remove most tier 10 medium tanks from the game entirely with just one clip, and you can take away probably 85 to 90% of the hit points of tier 10 heavy tanks, and some of them you can even remove from full health as well. So this tank is very, very good when you can use it. It does have a load of weak points. It does only have 1850 health. It is not an outrageously overpowered tank, but it definitely stops those pay to win tanks from just YOLOing into you, since you do have that high alpha damage. And if you're enjoying this video so far, then please do think about giving it a like, and let's jump into the next tank, which is just as good but at a different tier. And the next tank is a Swedish one, and it isn't, of course, the Kranvang, it's the tier lower, the Emil II. And that is because this tier 9 heavy tank has a combination of having that high alpha so that you can remove a lot of the hit points of vehicles that you'll be meeting, with 440 damage per shell, with 3 of them in the clip, allowing you to do a total of 1320 damage, if my maths has been correct, which I think it is. But either way, 1320 damage. You have a turret that is just super annoying for opponents to come up against, because you can just sit there and they really can't do anything if you do get hulled down. You can use the 12 degrees of gun depression that the Emil II gets, and also be able to mobilize yourself around the map with 40 kilometers an hour, which is fairly decent considering the effective armor that this tank gets on that turret, and with the alpha and everything else that the tank gets. Yeah, a very, very solid tank, capable of being a bit of a monster at tier 9, and hence why you'll see multiple replays at this tier being able to be dominated by this tank. And of course at tier 10 with the Kranvang, they both play very similar, and this one is certainly a force to be reckoned with, and why it is able to punish even the premium tanks that you'll see in the game. And then of course, finishing it off with the Old Faithful at tier 9 as a British tank destroyer, the Tortoise is absolutely disgusting at being able to remove those overpowered tanks from the game in quick succession, using both the AP rounds, and if you're finding a weakly armoured vehicle, using the Hesh rounds that the Tortoise gets as well, to have unbelievable amounts of damage per minute. And with the top gun on this thing with 400 alpha and reloading in like 6.8 seconds, when that is the base reload, allows you to tear apart tracks, retrack opponents, keep them locked down, and you can essentially remove the entirety of their hit points. And if you do catch them coming around a corner where you can't be able to hit their turret, or they can't actually see you, then that is like the ultimate dream with this vehicle. Or alternatively, if you're coming up from behind them, you've somehow managed to sneak your way around and you track them to the point where they can't turn the turret to see you, then that is once again a fantastic opportunity to farm up so many hit points. And even if they are facing you, because most tanks do not have even close to the damage per minute of this vehicle, they probably aren't going to be able to remove you from the game before you remove them from the game if you're one-on-one. Alternatively, maybe they're a hold down heavy that you can't pen, but still not really a problem if you do find that they do have in fact the cupola weak points. Maybe not so much on the pay to win tanks like the Chieftain, and of course some of the lower tier vehicles that don't seem to actually have any weak points at tier 8, but either way this tank is very powerful and can be a complete fun one to actually play at tier 9 as a tank destroyer. So hopefully that's given you an idea as to some of the best tanks in the game and some of the ones that at least are going to be able to stop the best tanks in the game dead in their tracks, or at least remove their ability to just YOLO within the game, which is always really fun. And you can certainly come out on top in these vehicles very easily if you do learn to play each one of them. And that is why I think that I wanted to show it, because there's so much of these broken, overpowered videos that we've always been doing, and so I've been focusing on trying to work out some videos that you guys are going to enjoy the most. And if you have enjoyed it and you want to see some more, then please do check out the channel and have a look at some of the other videos. And then of course, if you're interested in that and you found some value in it, then please consider subscribing. And of course, like this video if you enjoyed this one, and let me know what you would have added to the list, or maybe detracted from the list of tanks that can stop those pay to win ones in World of Tanks. Goodbye.